Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us here at the Chinatown Library. My name is Ashley Rayner. I'm a branch manager at Greater Grand Crossing at 73rd and South Chicago, but I'm also a huge nerd. And I just love Afrofuturism, and so when I was asked to help out with this, I was super excited because this is something I could talk about for hours. With me, I have two guests that I begged to come, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Matt Peters. I am the president of the Chicago Nerd Social Club, where we invite people to come to certain events throughout the year like this. We have an event in March called Pi Day, of course, hence 3.14, all that.
Yep.
That's going to be at Open Book Chicago. Also, I am one of the hosts of Lex and Matt's Excellent Adventure podcast that we're still trying to figure out what it's about on the 50th episode. But it's a lot of fun.
I am Terry Gant of the Southside Gants, owner of Third Coast Comics at 6443 North Sheridan Road in Rogers Park. I've been a black comic book retailer for about 15 years. At one point, I was the only black comic book retailer in the entire country. I'm now one of a handful. I'm the only one in the Midwest. I am also the co-host of Stakes is High, the Black Nerd podcast.
I guess we can start out a little bit, and I can start with this, but what does the term Afrofuturism mean to you? And so to me, it means the idea that black people from the diaspora, not just from America, will be in the future. Like, it's kind of planting our flag in the sand or in the moon rocks or whatever. This is where we're going to exist. We're going to be here. What is that going to look like? What is that going to do? And how will it look? How will it feel? How will it sound? Just kind of exploring those ideas.
It's always interesting to me because Afrofuturism seems to mean something a little bit different to everybody. To me, it's a way of celebrating black culture without looking back. Because, of course, it's no coincidence that we're having this panel today within Black History Month. We take a month every year to celebrate Black history. We're living the black present every day of our lives. But the black future isn't always something that's celebrated in culture. So when we see something like that, when I see something like that, I get excited. So that's what Afrofuturism is to me.
In my thinking about Afrofuturism, I think it does specifically require that you look back. Only because like every bit of science fiction that we've ever seen up until this point involves taking like an American past and present and like projecting that into the future. But like in Afrofuturism, the idea, especially when you're considering that it's about the diaspora, right? It is taking African culture, it's taking black culture, it is taking the things that like black people in America who have always been creators and inventors and futurists in terms of like creating a culture that is often borrowed from and then projecting that to the future. So you don't just get a future in which Africans and black people are in space, like on a spaceship exploring other planets. You don't get that without like the concepts and imagination that comes out of jazz, that comes out of like prog, that comes out of like any other form of art or the sciences. It's different ways of looking at all these things and then blending them together to get a future that is brown, right? With a perspective that is brown, whether it be 5 years from now or 100 years from now or 500 years from now. Right, so I think that it always seems to, every time I see something I consider to be Afrofuturistic, it always seems to also include a bit of it's bringing the culture with you. Right? So like you can't I don't think you can drop the past out. I think that there's it ain't necessarily got to be like like wooden spaceships, right? Like it's not that. It's so much it is just taking the best of the culture and then projecting it forward.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so funny because when we look at the futurist movement from the 20s and everything, it's so usually rooted in European culture. Yeah. We get all those ideals and all those processes, but it seems like Afrofuturism is like, no, we were here too, and we would like to bring our past to the present as well.
Right. Which is hilarious because when it's the "we were here too" part, a lot of times it is there's someone doing something sci-fi. And the only thing, if they want to do something that's even remotely Afrofuturistic, they decide to go to the pyramids, and not a pyramid, it's a spaceship. And then we have the Stargate TV show, and then that's someone saying, "Oh look, we considered you guys. Look at that. You got pyramids in space." You know, like that's kind of what tends to happen.
Well, then there's like the ancient aliens thing, right? Where it's like, oh, like definitely black people couldn't have done all this stuff.
Oh,
It's
no.
like,
Had
it
to be
definitely was aliens.
Had to be
Like,
aliens.
black people would never. And it's like, no, actually, we were.
Couldn't have possibly been that good with the science and the math and like the slide rules and the angles and the wheel.
Yeah.
No.
I get frustrated because, a lot of times when I was learning history, it was very much like Eurocentric. And I look back now and I'm learning these things that I didn't know when I was a kid. And I'm like, I would have liked history if there were black people in it. Like, I would have enjoyed seeing these things and not just seeing, the kind of normal things that we see during Black History Month, which is important, but, there's more perspectives to being black than just, Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King. Let's see, I had of course you guys said a whole bunch of really interesting things and I had thoughts about them. So what, I guess if we're talking about comics, like what are some of the comics that you're reading right now that really kind of speak to this Afrofuturistic bent? Like, are there any that you really enjoy? Anything that you're like, oh, I wish this was better?
Well,
Oh gosh.
I want to talk about that a little bit. I want to talk about something that I started with Terry because I do shop at Third Coast Comics as my primary comics shop. It was the Summer of Black Comics Challenge.
Yeah.
And so this is where I basically communicated to Terry, just like, look, throughout the entire summer, I think it was like 2 years ago, we're going to just pull every black comic on the shelf for me.
Right.
Whether it be a black creator or a primary black character, I want to read about it.
Yes.
And I had maybe 3 books in the box every week or so.
Yeah, easily.
Easily, and it's gotten better. Obviously, since the success of Black Panther and everything, it's gotten a little bit better. We've gotten the Black Panther spinoffs. With the Netflix shows, Luke Cage came back into the limelight, so we got a little bit of that. The downside to reading about most of these comics that star black characters is that they have just such a very short shelf life. Either because they're not really marketing them as much as the more mainstream characters, or people just kind of give up on them halfway through.
People like readers?
Readers. Okay. Yeah. So you look at something like Ironheart, which is an excellent book.
Yeah.
When the first few issues were coming out, people were celebrating it, talking about, oh yeah, it's from one of Chicago's best writers. I'm sorry.
E-Viewing.
E-Viewing, yes. Yeah. And you should check this out. Book's still going on, but people aren't really hyped about it as much as they were anymore, unfortunately. It's still great. And
I blame Netflix.
I'm sorry?
I blame Netflix.
Yes.
Netflix has ruined the attention span of the average graphic novel comic reader.
Fascinating.
Right? By giving you a TV show about anything that they can give you a TV show about, dropping an entire season on you in one day.
Yeah.
They've now raised an entire generation of media consumers who believe that in order to enjoy something, I have to be able to get it all in one sitting. Comic book reading and comic book collecting, particularly if you want actual meat, is something that your brain used to be trained to wait for the next installment of serialized. Like television used to be serialized, right? Comic books are serialized. So the format of comics is monthly. The reason people drop a title has less to do with the quality of the title than the idea that their brains can't handle waiting 30 days for the next installment of that thing. So what starts happening is people say, oh, I love Ironheart. I love the concept. I'm glad that there's a young black chick from Chicago who's basically like Tony Stark is pulling her along and wants her to basically be the heir apparent to everything that he's done because she's already outdoing him. That is a great idea, and people were responding to it positively until they found out they had to come back next month for issue number 2.
You're right. You're right about that. It's the short attention span. I totally agree with that. So what I think is the solution here? We need another milestone. Now, unfortunately, we need another Dwayne McDuffie for that to really happen, and may he rest in peace. But Milestone Comics, we had new issues every single. Yes. So this was an all-black comic line. It was like an imprint of DC Comics.
Well, because DC agreed to be its publisher.
Yes.
It existed pre-DC, and then DC were the ones that are going to go ahead and put the bill to get it out in the comic shops.
So this is back in the 90s. Characters that you may know from other animated shows now, like Icon and Static, and of course Hardware, which is heavily borrowed from now. For the Iron Man books, which is amazing. He was doing things back in the 90s, like the nanotechnology that we saw in Avengers Endgame that Tony Stark was using. That was all Hardware, and this is like 97, 98. Right. Wow. So all that stuff was already there. They predicted that. Yeah.
So you think that having a black-owned publisher would somehow help with the serialization? Or
Yeah,
I don't, but the only reason I don't think that this is the issue is because it all comes down to being able to get your product into the hands of more people quickly. So if a black-owned comic book company were created and they were going to do, let's say, Afrofuturism in comics or whatever, the next step would have to be to get people who are not brown to actually buy the product. Right? If every black comic book reader in the country actually bought every black comic book character in the country, you'd end up canceling. Right? Because there just aren't enough brown people out there buying the actual product. So what you have to do is you got to get it on screens. You have to get it onto something with a controller. You have to put it in print. You have to put it on the sides of buses. You have to do all these different things to get it in front of more people, right? And then count that as your success. Because even if the people who are reading Ironheart were buying it monthly, you're still going to end up with about 80,000, 60,000 sales or so. Right, a month, and then someone is going to say, but it's not 300,000 in sales, and therefore we have to chop it.
But do comics even do that much anymore? Like that high of a number? Like I know that individual.
Okay. Yeah, a success these days in comics is any comic book that sells, let's say, over 100,000 copies.
Okay, that's what I was.
Is considered to be a success.
Okay.
If your comic book company is a little, if it's hurting a bit, you might chop anything that sells below 30,000.
Sure. Okay.
24,000, something like that. Like at that point, you're selling to a hardcore fan base, but 25,000 readers is a drop in the bucket, and it's sort of static. It's like a baseline for most things published these days, right? So if you know you're at 25,000 and you're at issue number 18, you're going to be at less than 25,000 by issue 30, right? You're never going to go back to issue number 1 sales.
That's the hype.
So you kind of need Ironheart to have a number 1 every 6 months.
Which unfortunately Marvel does tend to do.
Yes, that's the Marvel Comics method, is to relaunch constantly to keep the numbers up. But that's not even saying they're trying to support something like, let's say, that is Afrofuturistic, right? So now in comics, I think we have a lot of things that qualify that have been published. So if you're going to the comic shop and you want 5 new things, you're not going to find 5 new things. But if you want 12 things, they're out there, right?
Yeah.
And like on my list, I've got Black Panther,
yes,
for sure, because the last 2 or 3 volumes of the current Ta-Nehisi Coates run is called like the Intergalactic Empire of Wakanda, right? So it is exactly what you're looking for. Yeah. It is Black Panther in space. It is Wakanda in space, right? There's a little bit of if you were reading it before this point, there's a bit of a jarring, like how the hell they get the space, right? They just yada yada over that. You'll find out 3 volumes down the road, but it happens. They're there. Far Sector.
Far Sector.
Far Sector is
by
N.K. Jemisin.
Okay. This is the Green Lantern.
It's Green Lantern. It's Green Lantern comic.
So let me interrupt you. N.K. Jemisin has won her books in the 5th season series have won 3 Hugos in a row, which no one has done. Male, female, black, white, anything. So she's an amazing writer.
I'll also throw in, if you haven't listened to her acceptance speech at the Hugos, that is a must watch, because the amount of shade she throws, rightly so,
love that,
is just amazing. Yeah.
So it's a Green Lantern comic about a woman who's a Green Lantern, but she is a Green Lantern who has been assigned. All the Green Lanterns in DC Comics are assigned to a particular area that they patrol, right? So she's been assigned to patrol an area that they don't even give a number to. It's so far away, it's so remote, right? They didn't even have a designation. She's just out there. But the beauty of it is it's a utopian society where she's also got to be the guardian for that has not had a murder in 500 years until there is one. Right, and now it's a cool concept of like taking culture and removing it so far from like regular Earth culture, and it still needs a cop, right? But it's got this chick for a cop, and it's a cool book.
Okay.
It's like at issue 3. Outer Darkness, which is kind of it's a sci-fi concept.
Okay.
In its design you can see like kind of African influence in like this design of its technologies and things like this and its characters. Moon Girl Devil Dinosaur was a long-running Marvel comic that is done now, but it's the main character is Lunella Lafayette, I think is the name of the character.
Yes.
She's a young black girl who is as smart as Reed Richards, if not smarter.
Smarter.
Who basically
I looked at a list today. She's smart. There's 3 black people on there. T'Challa, I want to say it was Shuri. No, Riri, and then Lunella's the top.
And then what she basically does though is really super cute. Like she makes these gadgets and things out of like kind of regular objects. So she's creating super technology, but it'd end up looking like a boxing glove on a accordion. Or something, But it'd be really cool thing. And she's got like a rapport with a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
You really buried the lead there.
Yeah,
Wait a minute.
The name of the book is Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. So it does. I kind of did, but the Devil Dinosaur is an important part of it.
It's a full-size T-Rex.
I consider Sam Wilson's Captain America.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Because a lot of times we're talking about Afrofuturism in terms of taking the culture and moving it into the future, but some aspect of this has to be in the superhero universe specifically. How do people who are adopting mantles deal with that fact that this is a new step, a change for them? And Sam Wilson's Black Man America, his Captain America is all about him, how he views America and his role in it, right?
Oh, wow.
As taking on the mantle of Captain America while also still being the Falcon. Like he still keeps the wings and all that stuff, right? And his view isn't the worldview of Steve Rogers, which is very important, right? He is recognizing he is in a different place in time now that he is Captain America, and I think it's an important thing to consider that, for him, he's thinking about his entire history up until this point, and it's a lot of it is about how the world relates to him when he becomes Captain America.
Right. How it changes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I'm curious, Terry, did the subscribers of Captain America, did they react well to that changeover? Did they continue reading the book as it went on?
My story's a little weird because I'm on a college campus, and the things that those kids sort of gravitate to is a little different anyway.
Okay.
Right? Captain America is not one that for my shop has always had strong sales for the most part, except for when Ta-Nehisi Coates came on. Then the Black Panther readers, a lot of them came on to read Captain America. Right?
Okay.
The problem with again the Netflixing and Marvel Cinematic Universe of America is. A lot of people feel very connected to Tony Stark and Captain America in culture. They don't feel connected to them if they have to read them.
Yeah.
You have to remind them these characters exist and have existed for 60 years, 80 years in comics, right? You have to tell them that.
Right.
And then they look at that and they go, not the same thing. They're not into Captain America. They're into Chris Evans.
That's interesting. I throw one more superhero in there as well. The recent, and this is almost like a reverse of what you're talking about. It's probably the exception that proves the rule. The Raising Dion show that came on Netflix. Amazingly started as a short, then it became a comic book, then it became the Netflix series, and people really seem to react well to that.
Raising Dion is about a little boy who has superpowers, and his single mom has to raise him and help him deal with these powers and how to explore them and things like that.
Right, primarily telekinetic. So if our little friend
Regina King
his dinosaurs float, that would be a good
Is Regina
example.
King in it?
I think it's Regina
Oscar winner Regina King?
The mom, I believe.
Is she?
No, she's not the mom.
No, she's not the mom. I thought it was in his shorts. I thought it was Regina.
I was like, wait a minute.
Is it some other lady who looks like Regina King?
No, she actually looks like Alicia Keys. I can't remember the actress's name though.
I remember there was a thing because she was lighter skinned than the actress in the original short, and that was a whole.
But Michael B. Jordan plays his dad, who shows up from time to time.
Interesting.
In a good way. Just watch the show.
Okay.
The other comic that I think that we almost never mention that totally qualifies as the Ultimates to
Interesting.
Al Ewing.
Okay.
Because this team, it's a team of basically mostly black and brown superheroes who are all somehow either science fiction or science based, right? And everything that this team has to do directly relates to traveling to other dimensions, far, deep space threats, right? And they're led by Adam Brashear, who is the Blue Marvel, who is a super intelligent black man who was a superhero in the Marvel Universe, but his story is that at some point something happened where everyone forgot he existed, right? And then he's basically, now that he's back, he has decided that he'll let other superheroes do the punching of the bank robbers day-to-day thing. He will deal with things that actually have to affect reality, right? And he's put together a team, including Carol Danvers and Monica Rambeau. And so it's got a bunch of characters that you might be familiar with if you're following black superheroes, right? But they're all in one unit together. And there was 2 or 3 volumes of that are really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. One character, we have not talked about DC at all, hardly.
Yeah.
Which is, just kind of like the elephant in the room. There are characters that I want to be more enjoyable from that Afrofuturism lens that unfortunately aren't. Cyborg. This is something that, I tell Terry about all the time when I come through the shop. I'm a big fan of Black Boy Joy. Show me some happy black superheroes. This is what I want to see. I mean, you've got superpowers, you're fighting crime. Sometimes that's an enjoyable experience, but usually we get the ex-football star that got in a horrible accident or the ex-race car driver that got in a horrible accident. You see where I'm going here.
Or Misty Knight, where she loses an arm in an explosion.
This is due though to when characters created, right? So the entire Marvel universe is created out of a bunch of characters who suffer tragedies and get superpowers. So that being the sort of like the beginning of the Silver Age of how like characters are created, it becomes through like 1986. Any character created before 1987 largely had some kind of tragic hook in their origin story. Cyborg had to be blown up, basically eaten by a bunch of plasma to get thrown into the thing. Misty Knight had to have an arm removed to get like the bionic arm or whatever. This is common for the era in which all these characters create. Science accidents make superheroes.
Sure.
Right? And you're missing reading comics in which you get like black dudes who get superpowers and they're thrilled with it, because the first thing that a writer is going to sit down and do is, where's my conflict coming from? And again, the Marvel way of writing, which a lot of guys came up reading, is you have to have internal conflict in your own group, right? And it's hard to get that when the first thing anybody wants to write is two dudes who are supposed to be buddies, like punching each other out. If you grew up in Marvel Comics, two superheroes who meet each other for the first time on a rooftop, they got to fight.
They got to.
And then this whole second issue is about why they were fighting. In the third issue, they realize it's a bad guy. We got to fight the bad guy. But if it's a DC comic, usually the tradition is two superheroes meet on a rooftop. The first thing they do is plan a barbecue.
Yes.
Right?
Oh.
And then the second issue is all about the thing that attacks the barbecue. In the third issue, they beat the thing. Right? That's how that always is in general. So you will know now. You know if you were reading any comic and it's a DC comic or a Marvel comic, and just consider, did they fight first or cook first? And you'll know if you're reading a DC character or a Marvel character.
That's a good metric.
Funny though, because we were just watching this morning. We were just watching Teen Titans Go, which I don't know. It's so funny because I remember the original Teen Titans show, which was like very serious, very much like a serialized thing. And then there's Teen Titans Go, which is like really zany and like super fun. And Cyborg is amazing on that. So like he's a lot of fun on that.
Because something like that, they remove the idea that Cyborg has to have this conflict with his father, and he's constantly angry and mad at his very existence.
Yeah, there's like no backstory, which is like, and you're talking about the idea of like this weight of like how comics have been, and like how people think it's Chris Evans, but really like Captain America's existed for a long time. And like for me, like as someone younger or like like him, you might be like, I just want to read the stuff. I don't want to know all this history. And so for me, Teen Titans is like super fun because you're just like, they're just having fun and like having birthday parties and stuff.
I agree with you, and a lot of that is owed to the voice actor for Cyborg on that show, Kerry Payton, who also plays King Ezekiel on The Walking Dead. And he just has this energy about him that just makes you just fall in love with whatever he's
But he was also the one before. Like, he was also Serious Cyborg.
He's got range.
Yeah. That's acting. Okay, got it. Yeah. No, I can't watch. I have to rage quit Walking Dead. I can't do that.
There's one comic that I can think of that I consider to be Afrofuturistic, even though there are barely any black people in it. That is the Jonathan Hickman run of the X-Men.
Okay.
He has absolutely written an Afrofuturistic comic. It just happens to be the X-Men. He has taken he's turned mutants into a culture, right? He has stated out loud that mutants have been beset upon long enough and abused and manipulated by society that they are now going to literally use their abilities to come together as one group. They literally make a call out to the mutant diaspora. It's mentioned. It's called that. They all come together. They come together at an origin point common to all of them, and then they leave. They're going off into space and going and doing whatever, and they're like, "Hey, look, guys, we're out of here. All of us, every mutant now, we're all brothers and sisters and everything. It doesn't matter if you were a villain. It doesn't matter if you were a hero. All you have to be is a mutant. You have access to Mutant Island, right, which can get you anywhere." He takes the concept that technology can be biological. Right, and they have their own plant-based language, plant-based language and plant-based technology.
It's a vegan language.
It's weird. It's weird. The language is printed in the comic. So like if you're reading the comic, there are times in which a thing is said and it's printed in the specific letter form that Hickman's come up with.
Was it Cohen, right?
Yeah, and then you could figure out what's being said here, right? And all of it is, all you have to do is just, if you squint or close your eyes, imagine everyone's black, right? And you get the thing that actually is the thing that kind of well, let's just say that when I think about Black Panther, there are two things that pop into my head, and it is one, Killmonger was wrong, but Killmonger had a point. And it is that Wakandans, for all of their technology and all of their ability, right, had no desire whatsoever to pull the diaspora together. Right? They weren't about to do it. Wakanda was for Wakandans, right? That was the entire plan. And for everything that they were capable of doing towards the future, if you were not born in Wakanda, it wasn't for you, right? It was not for you. So I feel like in Hickman's X-Men run, he is literally doing the, we can all come together, we're going to figure it out, and we're going to leave this pain and this damage behind, whereas Black Panther, the part that gets yada, yada, yada over was the only person there who's actually willing to say, you know what, it ain't got to be that. We can do something about this, is the one dude who, when he would do something about it, was also going to murder everybody. So he's not the good guy.
Wait a minute now, because Nakia also said the same thing first, and she was without the murder part of it. Like she wanted to murder people. She was like, we can do so much more. Remember at the beginning?
We can do so much more, but we're not going to do so much more because Wakanda won't allow it, and they don't want to do so much more.
I think that's why we don't see Nakia around that much after, because she was right. She was the most level-headed person there. And then they went ahead and did the thing that she said they should do anyway. And so she's like, I'm out. And you don't see her in Avengers. She's like, I'm not hanging out with these people anymore. I'm done.
Y'all should have listened to me.
Should have listened. People didn't have to die. Those poor rhinos. You know?
Poor rhinos.
Spoilers, sorry, if anybody hasn't seen Black Panther.
There's another thing in television that I think, if you're looking for Afrofuturism, is accidentally done it really well. The Expanse.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, The Expanse it deals with three groups of people. One is the people of Earth, one is the people of Mars, and one is the people of what's the belt. It's an asteroid belt, who are basically a minor culture who found themselves in the middle of a war between Earth and Mars. But the difference is, if you're paying attention to the Belters' culture, it is all deeply rooted in Africa and deeply rooted in Creole. Right? Their language and everything about them is pulled directly out of like an underclass of American Black society. Right? And many of the characters are of color. Right? But like you can tell they are no longer Earthers, and they're absolutely not Martians. Right? They're definitely not that. And if you make it to the fourth season, which you shouldn't, it's the best show on television. I like to refer to it as The Wire in space. But
that's a good pitch.
It's The Wire in space. If you are watching the show, you get to the fourth season, you realize there's a point at which all these guys want is they want independence and the right to self-determination. Mm-hmm. Right? This is what they're all about, and they have their culture is so much. Their culture is so far removed from its origins. Their bodies physically change to reflect that. Like they can't go back to Earth if they wanted to. Right? While Earth still needs them to do their jobs, it still needs them under their thumb, and they can't have this anymore as their way of life. And it's an extreme conflict. But everything about when you're watching this show and you look at just their perspective and how they've developed, they're just tell yourself they're all African. They're all Black Americans in space, and you would be right.
It kind of makes me think. We've kind of talked a lot about superheroes, which of course is part of comics. But are there any like non-superhero kind of? I was thinking of Nnedi Okorafor has a series called LaGuardia, which is about her like.
It's on my list. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No,
so that's where she's. It's basically about immigration, and like she, I think, is pregnant by an alien or somehow has been infused with alien technology. So like her hair starts turning into like vines, which is kind of a theme in Nnedi Okorafor's work. And it's really cool. It talks about immigration and like what it means to be like human or alien or whatever. That was really good. Yep. There's Bottom Feeders, which I just started. Have you guys read? Bottom Feeders is like a graphic novel, and it's like about Chicago sort of, and it's about this woman who moves back into like a building that her family used to live in, and it's real creepy, and there might be monsters, and there's also talk of gentrification and like what when artists come into like mostly Black or Hispanic neighborhoods. So there's a lot of like depth in that one too. I don't know if there's anything else not superhero on your list, but
was it a Bitterroot? I guess.
Sure.
Yeah, by David Walker and Sanford Green. They were the team that did the last Luke Cage and Power Man and Iron Fist run over at Marvel, and they just basically packed up and went and did an indie book, and it's a beautiful, wonderful story. Would Concrete Park be?
Concrete Park counts. Yep.
Yeah. That's the one with Eric Alexander?
Yeah, Eric Alexander co-wrote it.
From Living Single.
Yeah.
Maxine Shaw, Attorney at Law.
Yeah, that's a crazy book too.
Yes.
That's what's up.
Living Single record.
Living Single is amazing. It's not Afrofuturistic, but it is amazing.
It's still worth a watch.
Glad I got my girl.
Glad I got my girls, for sure.
I feel like we can't really discuss Afrofuturism without talking about music a little bit too.
Yeah, no, and I didn't really say this, but Afrofuturism to me is like kind of transcends media,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Movies, music, art, dance, all that stuff. So
yeah. So of course, first one of the first artists that comes to mind is Janelle Monáe. Oh my goodness, that the first album that really,
the
Arcandroid, yes, it told such an amazing story from start to finish, and there's a lot of Afrofuturism themes tied into that. Even the cover of it is just a picture of her inspired by Metropolis. That old, 19. Oh wow, okay. She got
I
facts
said I was a nerd. Okay.
Yes, but that's wonderful. She continues that. Missy Elliott, of course, with her music video catalog. I mean, she dressed up as Mega Man, her and the Brat, who fought robots in space. You can't get more, sci-fi than that. That's just amazing. Everything that Missy Elliott did, she basically was doing all kind of just like superhero stuff in those videos all the time. So I feel like she belongs in the conversation too.
I would think Chicago connection. Actually, Sun Ra is a big.
Yes.
I don't know if people know about him now, but like he was a really instrumental person. He basically said he was from Saturn and he was an alien, and like come with me on this trip to these other planets, and he would film videos and do music, and it was really really fascinating.
Basically, he was an avant jazz dude who just was not really designed to be on Earth. I would say it's not really his thing. For me, musically, so those are good examples. An example for me is I don't when I'm thinking of something that is Afrofuturistic, or if I'm in the mood to hear something in that vein, I start again with you start with like the jazzy kind of stuff, right? But then for where I'm at now, listen to bands like Animals as Leaders.
Okay.
Right, because it's a prog thing, so like it's going to be it's not going to be 3-minute long songs, but they're a prog instrumental band. Their leader is a guy named Tosin Abasi, who plays an 8-string guitar amazingly, and it's symphonic journeys in a way. Like it's built on jazz traditions, but also classical, also sort of like definitely rock and metal. And it's the kind of thing like as if I'm creating I'm an artist, so if I'm creating a piece and I want something that kind of keeps me in a mode that works with an Afrofuturistic theme or mindset, I would listen for something like that because it's modern, right? And it's built on other art forms of the past or other musical forms of the past, and it's clearly rooted in them, and it's very technical, and I like very technical music. I don't do a lot of pop.
I thought you were going to say like Parliament Funkadelic, which is what I always go to when I play.
Sure. After that completely qualifies.
No, it's just like
just album covers alone.
Yeah.
3-4 hours just staring at album covers. Probably.
They used to tell a story in the album cover alone.
They did, and that starts with Sun Ra and gets you to Parliament Funkadelic, right? That's like step 2 is right there.
And even like Earth, Wind, and Fire would have the more pyramids on the cover, but there's also spaceships flying from the pyramids, and that was really cool stuff.
Yeah. Oh, the Chicago guys.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of Chicago Afrofuturistic connections. It's pretty interesting. What was I gonna say?
It's all that dope smoking in the 70s.
Oh,
what?
Yes.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
No.
It's just stuff I saw. Nothing I did. Things I saw. I was too young to do.
So one thing that when we're talking about the different characters, like for example, Riri is basically the new Iron Man, Ironheart, and then Moon Girl there was Moon Boy originally. So there's like
Moon Boy is more like kind of a Neanderthal.
Right,
yeah.
But I mean these are like existing characters where you kind of added a black person. Do you think that makes it more accessible? We're talking about like comic book sales. Do you think that makes that more accessible to non-black people?
So it's a 2-part. So step 1 is it is difficult for a mainstream comic book company to create a new character of color out of whole cloth and have lots of people buy that thing without some touchstone to something that already existed as familiar. Okay. So the most successful new characters of color or not are characters who first were attached to something that was already successful. You do that for about a year or 2, and then you launch them, you springboard them off into their own thing. That works.
Like a Harley Quinn?
Harley Quinn qualifies.
Okay.
Because she's Batman related, and then absolutely. But was created in the 90s, and it took 30 years for her to actually have her own comic, and it could happen faster than 30 years.
Right.
Some would argue develop her own character. Away from Joker.
But fans have to get to know the character first in something that is not a risk. Mm-hmm. Like when it comes to readership and throwing down money, readership is largely risk averse. So if it's Iron Man, if it's Tony Stark, we're talking about Riri, you start her in Iron Man because Iron Man fans are already buying that comic. They get introduced to the character, and you can give them 18 months to 2 years Riri and various concepts, and before fans are now like, I'm ready to see her branch out. If you just drop Riri on them, right? Even if brown people all flock to the comic shop, you're gonna lose a lot of people who have no touchstone with the character. So you start them somewhere where people can get to know them before you launch them themselves. That works. Right?
Yeah.
It's
so
like when you're watching a sitcom and it feels like a backdoor pilot for another thing.
Yeah,
because it is.
Yeah, it could because it's a backdoor pilot.
Right.
That's why backdoor pilots exist.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That is the thing. So in the indies, however, so like if you're not talking about Marvel and DC, in the indies you have two advantages. One, there are a lot of people who want to read an independent thing.
Mm-hmm.
Two, you don't have to have 60 years or whatever of history behind said character. And the third benefit is honestly it's short-lived. It can be short-lived. You can do 2-3 volumes and get out and just create another thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The characters who are of color, who are super interesting in these stories, all kinds of stories get told because there we can just jump right in, give you the story that you want. It doesn't even have to sell 80,000 copies. Like we can go with a lower sales point there, and it still be a success, right? And you can have character development in the indies. Like what I always say about these other characters is, once the character appears on some kid's underwear, they're done developing.
Oh yeah,
We're done with growth. Growth ends at underwear.
That's when you know you're made.
No more growth. The minute that kid is that comic book character is on the kid's underwear, a backpack, an ice cream bar.
I'm sitting here thinking about the stuff my kid has. Like, wait a minute.
No more growth. If you go home and you look at anything,
Yes.
whatever that kid right there, whatever that kid has that has a superhero on it, whatever that superhero is, he is peaked. No other change will happen with that superhero
Stuck in
because
that
he
moment in
exists now. If it's on some kid's boots, we're done.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So the actual growth and development can happen in things that are not IPs designed to now sell future roller coaster rides. Right? We're just at telling stories.
Sure.
Right? That's what the indies get you. You can do any kind of story about any kind of character. You can explore Afrofuturistic themes. You can tell a story as dark as you want or as light as you want from the same publisher, right? And have it be a success and find its audience. Because now we're not just saying, Riri Williams is completely dependent upon all these people to keep buying it every month, right? Riri has a better shot of making it to a Saturday morning cartoon than being a successful graphic novel. And once she's a Saturday morning cartoon, the job is done. Right? Like now, millions of people can see Riri.
Yeah.
Not the 30,000 people we were hoping were 60,000 people.
I guess the counterpoint to that, sort of, maybe. Like, I remember going to see Black Panther. I think I went on like 11 o'clock on like a Friday. We took the day off, and like it was full of, I want to call them like mimas, like old church ladies.
The aunties.
Like aunties were there,
Aunties,
and I was like, I know these aunties have not sat through all the movies. They do not know all the lore.
Right.
Why are they here? And like my parents are not superhero fans. They went to Black Panther. It was just like such a huge thing. So like why? Like I get what you're saying about like
You literally just made my point though. Black Panther was a movie.
Oh, that's why. Oh,
they didn't walk in and buy the graphic novel. Some of them I'm sure did. A lot of people got Black Panther graphic novels as gifts. I sold them.
Yeah.
Right?
You gave some away.
Look, I got paid to be black that month. Like,
Yes.
I'm very happy. I'm very happy the Black Panther movie happened. I got actual cash money for being a black man in America. Like, that is not a thing that happens to me. I can't wait for Black Panther.
Well, I remember
got plans.
You doing a lot of speaking too. Like, I mean, stuff like this, for example. But I remember, like, around the time, like, you were doing stuff with, like, Loyola and great stuff.
Yeah. I had 3 different universities had me come in. Northwestern had me come in, talk to kids in a professor's home about Black Panther.
Yeah.
Then all these, there had to be like probably 75 kids in this woman's house, and then they all went and saw the movie. They wanted me to go with them. I was like, nah, I'm going to the bar.
Black Panther
No,
was just
Northwestern kids.
It was such an interesting point in history. Of course, we can't have this conversation without talking about Black Panther.
I was like, we got to get to it somehow, but I was like, let's ease into it.
Yeah,
go there immediately.
because there's more to Afrofuturism in comics than just Black Panther, but Black Panther is
which is why I think we had to. The way we had to do it, that makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely, and that actually does tie back into your question about characters being bought into the modern world. It may have started somewhere a little less black.
Do you want to talk a little bit about like how Black Panther got started?
So Black Panther was invented by Stan Lee and Jack. Was it Stan Lee?
We'll say Stan and Jack, but mostly let's say Jack.
Mostly Jack.
Because I'm a realist, I'm gonna have to say Jack.
Yeah, but it was.
I'll tell the Stan story, which means I'm just gonna make Stan Lee fans cry.
That's an argument for another time.
One of my favorite hobbies.
But we're gonna talk about
burst the Uncle Stan balloon. Yes.
He was a Fantastic Four side character, basically, when he was created.
He first debuted in an issue of the Fantastic Four, and it was the idea being that Jack Kirby literally said, we're doing all these other things in our comics, and our comics are supposed to be about telling stories that relate to what's going on in society right now, there's no way. Jack Kirby literally looked outside the Marvel offices and said there's no black character for these people that we're seeing walking around right now, these black men. There's no character for them. So Stan was like, what you got? Yeah. So Jack was like, I got an idea. Bam, Jack went home, drew up a character that he referred to as a Coal Tiger. So imagine like a kind of a Mardi Gras outfit with like kind of African colors and things, and a very happy, strong black man who was designed on Jack Johnson, the boxer.
Okay.
Right? The reason Black Panther has the dark blue, black, purple outfit now with a full face mask is because Stan Lee, who every kindly old man everybody loves so much, Stan said, if people see that guy, we're going to get hate mail. We can't have a black dude's face for this character. So Jack had to go back and redesign it and come up with a full face mask because Stan was afraid of this.
It was before, like, the Black Panthers, right? I want to say?
It predates, yes. The concept predates the Black Panthers as an organization, yes.
Okay.
Right. It predates the organization, but not the air, the pilots in the Black Panthers.
Right.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. So it predates that. So Jack comes up with the classic idea of what the Black Panther now looks like, right? And the idea is he's going to first prove, because he's created a noble warrior king hero, right? So the first thing Black Panther has to do is he needs the Fantastic Four's help for something. So in order to prove that they're capable of helping him, he breaks into their headquarters. And if they are capable of stopping him, then they're worthy of them helping him.
We didn't even do the barbecue first?
No.
That's DC.
That's DC. The barbecue.
I got something.
They meet the Black Panther and he breaks into your crib. That is the first thing that happens, yes.
The barbecue came next because he invited them back to Wakanda and had the Feast of Friendship that they called.
That did happen.
Cool.
AKA the barbecue.
There is a point in which Marvel tries to trial balloon how their readership will react to seeing a black man's face every month. They redesign Black Panther's costume again, and they remove the part around his mouth and nose, so you can see that in the Black Panther costume there is a black man under the mask. They get the hate mail, they put the mask on.
Stuff is so fast. The costume stuff alone is just like
It is the first time that you get to actually see a black superhero in a mainstream comic that is just clearly a black superhero is when Neil Adams decides that something has to change, and he creates John Stewart, right? And he is creating John Stewart as a Green Lantern, as an alternate to Hal Jordan, and he at that point is flat out saying no mask at all. Mm-hmm. It is going to be a black man who's going to be a Green Lantern, and then he creates this character, and that's damn the hate mail, because Julius Schwartz, then a DC editor, was saying to Neil Adams, this is going to, fans aren't going to react, because to them, back then, between 1963 and 1973, all comic book fans were white people, right? They were all white boys. So, they were terrified of this hate mail, to which Neil was like, somewhere along the way, you're selling comics in Chicago, you're selling comics in Watts, you're selling comics in Queens, you're selling comics in the Bronx, right? You're selling comics in Brooklyn. Some of the people buying these comics are not white boys, right? So at some point, you're going to have to, get your head out of your butt and do this thing.
And when was John Stewart?
1971, 72.
Okay, I thought it was, because I remember the cartoon, when he was in the cartoon. So I didn't know.
So DC even decided to kind of dip their toe in the water to decide whether or not they were going to start featuring more black heroes at one point. I don't know if this predates John Stewart, but I remember famously they had a survey in the back of one of their books. Oh, gosh. And it's these are things that we would like to know if you want to read stories about. Space, war, black people, and it was just one of the check boxes. So
it's cool when you're a check box. That's a good feeling.
That's when you know you've made it. When you're a check box.
Is that what
I check space. That's because I felt like if I got to read comics about black people, it's gonna be my parents, and I don't want to read comics about my parents.
See, my concern,
I want to read comics about space.
My concern is I don't know if Luke Cage predates John Stewart or not. But
Luke Cage does not predate.
Oh, it doesn't really?
No,
wow.
No. Luke Cage is mid 70s.
Okay.
John Stewart is early 70s. Luke Cage, I think, is even after Black Lightning.
Okay, so
Black Lightning is the first. Black Lightning is the first African American superhero to get his own comic.
Right. So that's where I was going actually, because Luke Cage is that blaxploitation superhero. It's basically oh, hey, Shaft has superpowers. Well, more superpowers. So, you put this black man in a yellow silk shirt and a tiara, you call it a day. This is what he was for decades, for generations.
This is now we can talk about sort of the genius that is Stan Lee.
Okay.
Because Stan Lee's only real talent was in promotions and marketing.
Okay.
He wasn't a very good writer, and he wasn't a decent comic book creator. He really didn't create things. So he promoted many things, and as editor, when he wasn't doing the like writer director thing he was doing, as editor and publisher, one of the things that he'd always wanted Marvel to do was keep its finger on the pulse of what was going on in the world.
Right.
So, or in the community, or in the city. So that's where you get things like taking advantage of blaxploitation, or
Yes.
like even Hong Kong action films, or like there was a bit where Marvel made like kaiju monster comics because that was a big thing. So like so much of what happened in pop culture definitely influenced how Marvel created characters. Iron Man is a direct result of James Bond movies.
Wow.
Right? James Bond movies being a thing, that's why Tony Stark is the dude with the briefcase and the pencil thin mustache at the time. He looked nothing like Robert Downey Jr. He looked a whole hell of a lot more like Errol Flynn.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It was because they were trying to basically do a James Bond superhero, right?
Yeah.
That they just gave the tragic hook of having a heart problem.
Because he had to have that tragic accident, like you said earlier.
Yes, they had a tragic accident.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
I didn't know
but-
that. I remember there was that really famous one of Luke Cage like talking smack to Doctor Doom.
Yes.
And like
yes.
punching him, and I was like, I love that. I don't know what's happening here, but I love this.
So that scene in particular is great to me because
I was like, who is writing this? Do they know how black people act? Like, do they know a black person? It was just very confusing.
in particular, he came to the decision that Dr. Doom owed him $500 specifically.
So Luke Cage did everything for money.
Yes,
I
he
mean,
was a hero for hire.
yeah.
You see, so he decided to borrow the Fantastic Car, which is a flying car.
Sure.
Yes.
As you do.
A flying bathtub / car, and go to this imaginary country, Latveria. Is it Latveria?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And decided to take on Dr. Doom alone to get his $500.
As you do.
Dr. Doom was like, "You really just flew over here to get $500 from me," and the best Luke Cage line of all time, which cemented his role as a blaxploitation character forever. "Where's my money, honey?" And he punches him in the face. That's just it. There's no shaking that off after that
man.
point. So
It's crazy to me that it was like a show, like an actual show, like this pretty critically acclaimed show, and I was like, this was the source material. Like,
Yeah.
it's fascinating. They made it work somehow. I mean, I guess that's.
But that's also how major publishing companies work. All these things are IPs. So like it might be that that's the source material, but it's a character. Like when Disney bought Marvel, they didn't buy it because they wanted to make comic books. They bought it because they wanted 6,000 characters they could do anything they wanted with.
right.
Right?
Cinematic
6,000
universe.
characters they could sell or lease,
Yeah.
out, and then more things could happen.
Yeah,
And the average fan has no idea what the comics were like. They don't care.
I have really complicated feelings about the fact that Disney has like basically bought all of our mythologies, like all of our modern mythologies, and like they control them. We'll not even get into Star Wars, but like that whole.
I
all of
tell
that
people
is-
all the time the solution to that is for you to remember the mouse did not climb through your window and steal your comic books.
Right, I'm
They
not.
didn't do it. So yes, they're going to muck with your mythology.
Right.
If you're watching it on your screen.
Right.
But if you do the hermit thing that ruins your life like Matt and I did, you just rat hands through some boxes every so often.
That sounds
you can,
good.
You can take home the actual stories, and you can,
Excuse me, who's the librarian over here?
I'm a librarian.
Okay.
I'm a librarian.
Right, everybody's like,
Everybody raises their hand.
It's Spartacus.
Not gonna lie, I heard who's the Latvian.
Oh,
And I was like,
She's like, my
really good
people.
ears.
we
That's
are
amazing.
going to have a problem.
yes.
Flip the table and go.
Someone's about to get punched. Someone's looking for their money.
It's not the first library panel I've been on where a table got flipped. It's
Oh
fine.
wow.
It's fine.
Okay.
It's fine.
All right. That's a whole different
Do we
thing.
want to do? Do we have other questions? Do we want to do
I
questions from the
always
audience?
have lots of questions, but I think we can ask if people have questions. We would love to hear them, but if not, I can, keep talking. That's not a problem.
I see a hand in there.
I got a question, just going back to the mask question, which is, and to your expansive definition, is Watchmen, the show, Afrofuturistic, and if you want to take it on just with mass justice and the way they did that, kind of, so the first superhero was, to your point, like masked, black man masked in order not to show.
Yeah. So the answer number one is yes, I consider Watchmen to be Afrofuturistic because of the actual way the conceit in the Watchmen TV show is black people get reparations. You start right there. Black people actually get reparations, right? And then other things in the story have happened to change how their world relates to black people, right? And how black people relate to themselves, right? That is a step the show takes, and I think it kind of matters. And absolutely, the Hooded Justice thing from the show is directly taken from stories of how black characters had to be presented in order to actually make it onto bookshelves.
I give that show so much credit just for even making people realize that the Tulsa Massacre actually happened.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just fiction, because, that was the first thing people said when the show debuted, which is, oh, I can't believe they put something like this on television. Why would they make up this tragedy? No, dude, that happened.
Welcome to being black in
Tulsa's
America.
real. Right. Tulsa's
Yeah.
real. Rosewood is real.
Black Wall Street, all that.
Philadelphia's real. These
So-
things have happened.
Yeah, when I talk about the history that I didn't learn until I haven't seen Watchmen because I don't have HBO, but I knew about that, and I was like, I can't believe that this is happening. This is like a major television show that's talking about this thing that a lot of black people know about, but a lot of other people don't.
Yeah.
It's amazing the 180 that it took from the source material. Because famously, I'm not a big fan of Watchmen. The book, the movie, I just feel like it's very pretentious.
It's a blind spot.
Yeah. So we'll discuss later.
Man,
but yeah, not the biggest fan. But the show just managed to hit all the right notes. It was entertaining. It was informative. And, it left a lot of questions after the fact in a good way. So I highly recommend
That was
that.
another one that my parents watched. And, again, they're not superhero people. But I think Oscar winner Regina King
Yes.
made them, really, I interrupted you, I'm sorry.
No, I'm going to say that Watchmen the book would have had more black characters in it if Charlton Comics had black characters. And the only reason Watchmen itself doesn't have, that's the reason, is that Alan Moore, DC had acquired Charlton Comics and everything that it was, and Alan Moore wanted to use those specific characters.
Okay.
So Alan Moore had no problem with black people in his story. The characters he was using just weren't, right? So the cool thing about this is the writers of the show understanding that there was nothing anti-black in terms of not using black characters, but the world that existed was very anti-black, right? And that's established in Watchmen, right? So kind of subverting that thing and pulling it forward, I thought was very clever.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? Go, sure.
Hey, so kind of two parts to this one. One, just interested in hearing your takes on Afrofuturism and video games in particular. And then two, the most, public or most recent Afrofuturism representation of video game was in the character Jax from Mortal Kombat 11's ending to that, and the backlash that came with that. So interested to hear where, some of your takes on that, and just sort of exploring sort of how the audiences that are required to help lift these characters up react when they see Afrofuturism and take it as a threat.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to spoil Mortal Kombat for a few people here if you guys care about that. So the most recent Mortal Kombat game played around with time travel quite a bit. Jax is one of the characters in the game. He's got robotic arms because they were ripped off in the previous Mortal Kombat. So at the end of this tournament, each character gets their own ending. Jax's ending was he wanted to go back in time to basically end slavery, right? So he made the world a black utopia, and it played out, in a little slideshow, and the internet was livid because that's what the internet does. I don't know. It's just kind of weird. But my take on it was interesting. Of course, the first thing you're going to want to do if you have time travel, they always have the whole I'm going to go and take down Hitler sort of thing. So what's a black person going to do that, has seen the effect of slavery? Maybe pull a haters through time like Dave Chappelle and go and take down slavery, So they were just showing that, and people got in their feelings about it. So it was kind of just a weird moment in gaming. I don't really, unfortunately, think that there's much of a presence of Afrofuturism in modern gaming. There's a lot of appropriation. In particular, what comes to mind, and it's a wonderful game, don't get me wrong, but Horizon Zero Dawn took so much. This is a game based on a dystopian future where basically all technology is outlawed and people have finally started to co-opt it back into their lives. It's a good game. It's a fun game, but there's a lot of appropriation in the game of different cultures. Particularly, a lot of people had concerns about the hair and its meaning. But yeah, I would like to actually hear about some other Afrofuturistic games if you know of it.
I'll tell you what to do in gaming.
Okay.
Stop playing all these games. Just go back to playing Skyrim.
Yes.
And then when you go play Skyrim, play as a red guard, or you get mods and you mod your game, your Skyrim game, because there's mods that will make it black. So all you do is just play Skyrim. It came out in 2011. It's right there for you. Right? You can play it on the PC. You can play it on the Xbox. You can play it on the Switch. On the Switch, you can play it on the Switch. You just can't mod it on the Switch.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
I didn't know Bethesda was sponsoring this panel, but yes.
So play Skyrim, right? That's what you do. You just all your other games are useless.
Yes.
You can make Skyrim as black as you need it to be, right? And it will never let you down. It will be there for you. You could walk away from Skyrim tomorrow and come back a year later. It will still be there.
That's
and
true.
Can make it be even better a year later. Trust me. That's the only game you need. Go play Skyrim.
You can. I will co-sign this to an extent. You can make Skyrim a more Afrofuturistic,
Black as hell.
Afrofuturistic game. You can make everybody a red guard. You can put lightsabers in it if you want to.
You can make it black in the 73rd and Cottage Grove if you want to.
That's black.
Somebody's out there for you. You can do it.
That's super black.
Skyrim is for you.
Yes.
Just play the game that already allows you to do the thing that you specifically want to do because someone is already thinking about that thing. Because game developers are never going to make a game that stars black people in a way that you would want from an Afrofuturistic perspective because they're afraid that white teenagers would never buy it.
Well, that's kind of a concern too because there are games that do
Just for
star.
the realness, y'all.
That's right. Skyrim, like
73rd
Wu-Tang,
Scott
is for
has
people.
Skyrim is for the people.
Skyrim's for the people. So there are games that do star black protagonists. Mafia 3 recently came out.
Mm-hmm.
What's the other
Watch
one?
Dogs 2.
Watch Dogs 2.
Sure.
There's also a game, and I'm not remembering the name of it, but where it's like kind of I want to say like a fantasy kind of Afrocentric game. And I remember the sprites being really pretty, but of course I'm not remembering the name of it. But it's like a super indie game, like it's no big publishers.
I made a black dude in Mass Effect, but I couldn't get off the first planet I went to, and I gave that up and went back to playing Skyrim.
There's a theme here.
It's also and it's also funny because like I've been playing video games. I was thinking about this recently, like since I was like 4 or 5. And so, like, basically the only way that you're in a video game is if you're, like, one of the hookers, in GTA.
Okay.
I remember seeing that, a black woman specifically. And then, like, the ones where you can make the character, your hair choices are so bad. It's
my goodness.
Oh, my God. So, like, I just have one big dreadlock somehow. Like, that's not how hair works or moves or does anything. And so, I mean, it's just it's very important. I do remember, though, like, with one that talking about modding, there's a lot of black modders in The Sims, which is not really like I would call it Afrofuturistic, but like the idea of like being able to like kind of put yourself in this game and make you how you want to be, like that's probably one of the biggest games I know of where there's like a lot of like black modders.
A lot of it comes out of like the need for a community to develop something that it's been looking for. So if you're waiting for the main developers to do a thing and they won't do it, modding communities exist to get you the thing that you're looking for. Someone is going to do this, and people just come together and make it themselves. And as long as the platform allows for it, I would say until people make the version of a game that you are really looking for, until that happens, support the modders who are already doing it.
People always say that, though. There are people always like, oh, well, if you don't see yourself in this, you need to make it. And it's like, yeah, okay, with like the money and the time and the computing
I have none of the ability to make my own mods.
Right, or like even movies or books or whatever. I mean, there's different levels of entry, but that's so reductive. It's like you don't even...
Right.
The point is not like, yeah, of course, if I could, I would, but like...
Right.
Other people should be thinking about this, not just you and me.
True.
So.
My biggest problem with that argument is always we are making our own things.
Right.
It's just you folks aren't paying attention.
Right.
So
or the amount of like power, energy, and effort it takes to get that signal out there that a thing has been done.
Yes.
Right. And in independent comics, this is also why it is sort of the biggest issue is like the catalog I do my comic book orders from my shop from is about 800 pages thick every month. Right. The big two publishers take everything that they're soliciting right out of the catalog and put it in their own little publications, right? Mm-hmm. So the two little inserts come right out. The catalog is still this thick. Mm-hmm. This much of that is independent comics, right?
That's a small amount.
It's a large amount. It's massive. There's tons of pages are independent. The small amount is like T-shirts and glassware and games. You know what I mean? And toys. Okay. That's a tiny amount. The amount dedicated to independent comics that are not Marvel and DC is massive. It's the bulk of the catalog. The trouble is that section is massive. It's so large that every retailer has to decide what he's got room for on the shelves.
Right. And what will sell. Right?
And what will sell. Well, what they perceive they can sell, let's say 80% of, you know? Okay. So for me, what I have to think about is, do I have the audience for this thing if I risk it, right? So when I'm thinking, a lot of people are trying to make something that is Afrofuturistic and really cool and really super interesting. Can I sell X amount of these to X amount of people is the calculation I have to do in my head, right? And then are there enough people doing it so that not only do I order this thing, I can order things that support that thing. If I just order this one book and I sit it in one place on my shelf, it's going to get missed. But if I can buy 8 different titles, right, that support this thing, right, now they're kind of seeded around and you can create something that way, right? But like if Marvel or DC has to do it, it's never going to happen. The independent guys are doing it. They just need retailers have to make that internal calculation that if I take a chance on your comic, Matt's comic might get pushed off my shelf.
I don't want to do that.
The big, but the big publishers, the whole game to stop you from getting your comic on the shelf is 8 comics have to be about Batman, 15 comics have to be about Spider-Man, right? Yeah. So I have to think Batman and Spider-Man sell. I can't risk not getting one of those 8 comics because Batman sells, right? So me personally, I decide Batman's got 8 comics. I only need 2 of them. Right? Spider-Man has 15 comics. I only need 2 of them. Right? And I just go ahead and punt the rest of that. That way I can give independent comics some space. And specifically when they get to the point where they're trade paperback, when they're collected, not when they're monthly. Because at that point, I don't tell the fan in my shop that he missed 6 issues of this last summer. Yeah. There's 1 volume sitting on the shelf. That's the thing you need. I tell them to get that thing. Don't even tell them it was ever a floppy comic, right? That way I have a chance to support an independent thing that might be the kind of thing you're looking for, and I can support it deeper than having to sweat the monthly sales of that thing, right? And having to argue with my publishers over, why am I not ordering 2 copies of this extra Ghostwriter thing that I don't need?
Let me ask you, this is like kind of in the weeds, but like, do you guys get like a book that tells you, hey, these are all the things that are coming out? Like we get like
that's the previous catalog. Yeah.
Okay, so we get like publications that are like, oh, here's a review of these like buzzy books, and here's
something you might know about. What we get is what I get is something that is I have to kind of like. You ever had like that uncle who would come around and tell you he's going to take you to Disney World, he's going to you're going to go to Great America and do all these kind of things, but actually all he really does is kind of come around when there's a barbecue, but he never really does the things he says he's going to do. The comic book distributor system is a lot like that.
That's not real specific.
They're not. They are not your friend. They're going to give you a list of the things that they've got, and everything they're going to write it up themselves, and everything is the most amazing thing you absolutely must have in your shop.
Yeah. Okay.
You have to think you can't trust these guys. Yeah. Okay. Right? You cannot trust them. They're going to do what they do, which is what you are the customer. Well, in this case, I'm the customer, not you. As a retailer, I buy the thing, and then I have to convince you to buy it for me so that you save me from my possibly bad decisions. Right? That's the system. Okay. So when I get the catalog, I'm not getting a review of the thing from other people. I'm getting what the distributor tells me is going to be amazing in 2 months when it shows up sight unseen. Right? Okay. I don't get a free copy to read a lot of times. If it's an independent thing, the creators themselves will send me a PDF to try to get you into it. Like, that's a thing. I can trust that. If I get a PDF and I can read it first, I'm almost guaranteed to order.
That's awesome.
Right? Small publishers too, like First Second. Yeah. Because they do that for the reviewers. Yeah. As well, they'll send me a copy of it and just be like, hey, check out the Jin Luen Yang book that just came out. Yeah. It makes me want to support it even more. Yeah.
That way, at least then in narratives, there's like a way that you'll get a story that that you're looking for that is something that is more than what you've had before, more than the status quo, like that kind of thing. That works.
Interesting.
Sorry, did we answer your question?
Oh, no, great conversation. I don't think
we'll play Skyrim, man. Let's play Skyrim. That was the answer to his question. He was done.
The one recommendation
I solved all his problems.
Yes. And it's not direct, and it's maybe another part of it, but I think Destiny does a good job with representing people, but also there's one of the lead NPCs is very coded. They're an alien, but they're very coded.
Gotcha.
Okay. So, the way Martian Manhunter's black.
Yeah.
Yes.
I always I don't like that always drives me nuts because I'm like, just put black people in it. But
it's a very customizable world, cool. And it's not a narrative that you follow, so it's still there's a gap there.
They're just hanging out.
But it's it's interesting in that when you have a world where people are kind of creating their own characters and putting into it, like a Skyrim in a lot of ways, that's kind of the only way to get in there. And I think that's the halfway point where the developers meet, but it's still halfway.
Yeah, I don't mean to roll my eyes at you. I'm rolling my eyes at society in general.
Yes.
I've been on the receiving end of both ends, so it's fine.
Yeah, for sure.
Any questions over here? Omar, you got something. You always have great questions.
We'll talk later.
We're going to go to lunch, and Omar's going to be like, man, look, here's what I want to know.
I have a lot of questions.
I did have one request.
Yes.
For people who are looking to get into Afrofuturism, if you had like a gateway piece of media, could each of you recommend one?
You ready to write? Okay. First name is Yatasha Womack. Anything she's written.
She literally wrote the book on Afrofuturism.
Yeah.
Like, literally, she has a book, and it's titled Afrofuturism.
Yeah.
Of course, Octavia Butler, Parable of the Sower.
Oh, yeah. Hello.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. N.K. Jemisin, who we mentioned earlier. The Broken Earth trilogy. You know, that's good stuff.
One of my favorite writers is a guy named Alistair Reynolds. He's an astrophysicist. I've never gotten that reaction before.
Wow. That's why you come to the library, because we have read the stuff. You're like, oh.
Right, librarians read books.
Yep, a little bit.
I was not ready. That's awesome. Alistair Reynolds wrote a book called Blue Remembered Earth, and I would recommend that. He doesn't normally do Afrofuturism, so I don't even think he realized he was doing when he did it, but he did it. And he's my favorite hard sci-fi author. So that guy writes something I tend to go and get it, but that one for sure follows an African family through time into space. You know, it's cool. Blue Remembered Earth. It's book 1 of 3, but pretend that you don't have to that you're not getting sucked into a thick hard sci-fi trilogy, because you are. A lot of people don't like when that happens to them.
Yeah.
But you're gonna get kidnapped.
The best ones are when they sneak up on you.
Nervous about that. Everyone said books, so I'll go and do something else. I definitely Janelle Monáe, the Arc Android, but I would also say Brother from Another Planet, which is kind of an older movie, but it stars, what's his name? It's the same guy who played in Terminator. Joe Morton, yes, thank you. And so basically he comes to Brooklyn, I want to say, and he's kind of a refugee. No, he's a refugee. And there are people that are after him. He can't talk, but he kind of goes around and does odd jobs, and people get to know him. And so as he's running from these aliens that are these bounty hunters, just kind of how he experiences the world. And it kind of does my thing that I just complained about, where it's aliens as black people. But it's definitely really interesting to kind of see that perspective in a movie. There's not a ton, outside of Black Panther, there's not a ton of Afrofuturistic movies. So I'll put that up there. Also, if you could, this is another really weird one, but if you can find a copy online of Cosmic Slop, which was a thing on HBO. It was 3 short movies, and the first one that I saw it as a kid, and it warped my brain, was about was called The Slave Traders. And so that's based off a short story where basically aliens come and they say, we will fix all of your problems, the planet, money, energy, all that stuff. You just have to give us all your black people.
Oh.
And it goes about as you'd expect.
Yeah.
So, but there's a movie version of it that totally ruined my brain when I was a kid. So that, those are some other kind of weird deep cut examples.
Yes.
Last question.
Oh.
If you could go back in time and hand a modern day comic to your 12-year-old self, what would you give him or her?
Oh my, a modern day comic.
Something you've been talking about, or could be something else entirely.
Okay.
Something that you think, I need this, or I needed this.
So today when I was looking, and I was looking for pictures, and I found one. I was looking about Moon Girl, and like I said, on the list of Marvel superheroes that are the smartest, she is the top one. And so if I could, and that made me tear up, and even the idea of saying that out loud is making me emotional. So if I could go back and bring that to me and be it's okay that you're smart and you're nerdy and you wear glasses. That is all good. That's all amazing. It's a good part of you, and you're gonna this is what the future looks like. I think that would really have meant something to past Ashley.
I really think that 12-year-old me would have enjoyed that Power Man and Iron Fist run from David Walker and Sanford Greene. It was just so perfect for the time, and it just showed we can be superheroes. We can be exciting. We can be positive.
Not always sad.
Not always sad, not always bogged down by the world around us, but trying to lift the world around us up. So I think I would appreciate that as a kid.
I think for me, my problem is I've been collecting comics since like 1976. So 12-year-old me already has a crap ton of this stuff.
But I don't want that.
But I think that the thing that I would probably really love to read at 12 would have been my favorite comic series of all time, which is 27 issues of a comic called Planetary, in which the writer, Warren Ellis, he pulls from every bit of sort of speculative fiction narrative for a 27-issue series, and every issue touches on something else that's very familiar, and he does awesome with metaphor and allegory, and he digs real deep to kind of create one whole cohesive picture of a universe that involves Arthur Conan Doyle, that involves like just everything. It involves Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. It involves he wraps up Gene Roddenberry. There's all these things that get sucked into it along the way that like you find that when we're growing up reading comics and things, a lot of times we think that like, you know, this comic book company is distinct from this comic book company, or this character is distinct from that character. And we never consider that they're all related, they're all connected, they're all borrowing from some source material, right? And it's okay to go back and read, like, you don't have to just read Marvel or DC. You can read Jules Verne, you can read H.G. Wells, you can read Octavia Butler, and have it all connect to other things you've already read, right? 12-year-old me would have loved to know that I didn't have to live in these like pockets of nerddom, right? That they kind of like
it can be your whole life.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah,
terrifying.
You know, yeah.
I'm changing my answer actually. 12-year-old me would have wanted Saga because of the adult themes and the black characters. Don't read Saga around your kids. It's good.
You can't open up the first page around your kids.
And the drawings are so pretty. It's like deceptively.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. You know, on the cover of the first one was like breastfeeding,
right?
And that was a crazy moment. I remember.
Like that's the cover. The first one was the actual birth.
See,
that was the first page. Yeah.
No, maybe one of the collections. I remember it's like blue, and then there's like.
So breastfeeding, actual birth. That's tame compared to what I'm thinking of that I won't lay out in detail right now.
That's why I'm saying it was funny. Breastfeeding's fine.
Oh, absolutely.
You open up the pages and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
But that's where it starts,
ready.
though.
Yeah. But in that,
first words I remember that Alana saying was, to paraphrase, I'm pooping.
But in all of that, there's black people in space. So yes, still on top. Awesome.
Entirely.
Yeah, for sure.
What else we got?
That's the beginning.
Yeah.
Did anybody mention Red Dwarf?
No.
I've never seen Red Dwarf. I know of it, but I've never seen it.
So this is two parts. One, I did watch Red Dwarf, but I was such a Doctor Who nerd that I had a problem with it because it was funny. My blind spot with a lot of this stuff is whimsy. I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do. I don't want them to try to make me laugh. Right? I want to laugh because it's funny, and I want my sci-fi to be serious. And Red Dwarf was good. It was apparently very entertaining. I never got it because Doctor Who was stupid but serious. Red Dwarf was serious but comical. Right? You'll love it. You will love Red Dwarf.
And to me, Doctor Who is so. Doctor Who is very intimidating to me because there's so many episodes and you can't even see all of the episodes because some got erased. And so like there's just all this history.
Better
and
than
it's
some got erased, some got lost in a fire.
Yeah. So
some got taped over with other episodes.
That's what I'm saying. I'm a completed, so I'm like I can't see everything. Like I'm not even gonna start. But yeah, no, it looks really goofy, and I'm like, you think that's serious? Like,
I went down that Doctor Who rabbit hole once upon a time.
It depends on which Doctor you're watching. So like, this is why Red Dwarf. So Red Dwarf had a short lifespan. There were not 30 seasons of Red Dwarf. There's only like a couple.
Okay, so it's achievable.
He just came back too.
Oh,
just came back. Just because this is what the BBC does with their shows. This is what British television does. They'll take a break. They don't even call them seasons. They call them series.
Yep.
They take breaks. And then when they feel like it, they'll come back whenever. I can't exist off of that type of non-commitment. I want commitment from my television. I don't want cliffhangers and just nothing. I'm still waiting on Jekyll to come back.
Netflix ruined you.
Yes, it did.
I'm saying Netflix is back.
And I felt, when you said that, I felt so bad because I'm definitely the person that waits for the trade paperbacks. I just can't.
I have a problem with you people.
I know, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Because you're lying to yourself.
Yes, I know that.
All like trade waiting is not buying the other things you want. I am a nerd with no ability for delayed self-gratification, right? And neither do you. None of you have the ability to delay your gratification. You can't do it.
Okay, I haven't bought Skyrim yet, okay?
Well, okay.
You need Skyrim? I have it on every format allowable.
Also guilty, I'm sorry. But okay, but back to the sci-fi thing. Back to the Red Dwarf. Yep. The Red Dwarf thing. So I tried, based on May's suggestion, Red Dwarf a few years ago, and I did enjoy it. But because it disappeared for a while, it kind of slipped my mind. Doctor Who, kind of the same thing. 2005, I got on the train just like everybody else when Eccleston jumped on, and I tried to go backwards, didn't work because, I was just encountered head first with this thing with a whisk and a plunger, and I'm like,
here's what you have to understand about old Doctor Who.
Okay.
Old Doctor, so current Doctor Who,
yes,
is effectively a relatively entertaining person running around screaming like their hair's on fire, right? Plots will be wrapped up in an hour. We're just going to wave this magical toothbrush in front of it, and everything will be fine. Old Doctor Who is a cross between Columbo and Sherlock Holmes in space, right? It might take 7 episodes to resolve whatever the plot is. It might take 3. Yes. It might take 9. Old Doctor Who is written the way old comic book stories used to be written. You didn't know if your comic book story was going to be 3 issues, 5 issues, 9 issues, 12 issues, 15 issues to tell that entire story. It was written the way that writer intended it.
Okay.
Right? That's how long it will take. How long it takes. When you go and say, "Mom, when is dinner? When it's ready?" Right? That's how old comic book stories were written, and that's how Doctor Who was written.
So I got over
Mom
the
could never say 45 minutes.
I got over my Doctor Who hesitation. I'm a fan now. But the reason why I was heading down that path is because the way that sci-fi shows hooked me, specifically Black people in space, the way Black people in space sci-fi shows hooked me, LeVar Burton on Reading Rainbow, taking us on a tour of the Enterprise.
That was wild.
That's what got me. Because I'm a little kid, I'm watching, I'm like, oh my goodness, he does something else? Oh my goodness, he's on a spaceship? I need to watch this now. And then they show Worf busting down the door of his trailer. I was in love from that point on. So when I think about the shows that were available to me around that time, on PBS, Doctor Who, which not very many Black people.
Had a lot of Black people.
And of course, The Whisk and the Plunger. And then you have Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm gonna go check out Star Trek.
Star Trek: The Next Generation also had computer animated like stuff. Like they've done a lot. They come a long way, but they also have what's called a budget.
That's true.
Which Doctor Who did not necessarily have.
Very
Doctor Who's entire existence was about presenting an after basically the Saturday morning show for kids.
Yes.
Right? So it had somewhat of a budget at the time, but it was largely they were nerfed constantly by what they were able to pull off with their money. And Doctor Who started in the early 60s.
Yeah.
By the time you got to the 80s,
yeah,
they had MTV music video levels of budget, right? And you really didn't want them using that technology. It made it worse, right? It's better that we stick to Whisk and Plunger because that we know.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's okay.
And the Whisk and Plunger has endured through time.
My Star Trek problem was I remember being super excited Avery Brooks got cast as Sisko.
Space Dad.
I was so thrilled. No, that was my problem. Because my only reference for Avery Brooks before this point was A Man Called Hawk. And I thought Deep Space Nine was going to have his bad brother. This dude was going to be like, what? Bring the Klingons. Let's do this. What you got? You pulling up talking that smack? Oh, no. Somebody pull around my Mustang spaceship. I thought my man was going to roll through space with his cutlass. I thought it was going to be...
Space Dad was about that life.
Oh, no. He was talking all slow and...
He was all Shakespearean.
It was weird. I was like, come on, man.
Two things.
Don't step to him. Don't step to Jake. Okay, wait a minute. He would not stand for that.
Two things.
Jake was a punk ass.
I love Jake. I had a crush on Jake. Stop. Do not talk about Jake like this.
Everybody was bowing down at the altar.
Jake had
of
lacrosse
Captain
lessons.
Anyway, everybody was bowing down.
Whatever. I played tennis. Okay, I don't want to do this.
Everybody bowed down at the altar of Picard.
Oh my God.
Look, Sisko wasn't having that Picard hero worship. He was like, look, I know what this man is. I know what he did. I ain't about that. Okay? Yeah. Second thing.
It took 5 seasons for Sisko to be that dude.
Anyway, he also punched Q square in the jaw. Who was doing that? He punched him in the jaw and then did a D'Lo Brown head wobble at the man while he was on the
You're just telling me he was black. All you're telling me is he was black. Any black man would have done that.
to make me upset.
Worf would have been tossed aside.
I know.
He would have been. That was another problem with Star Trek.
Worf was the security guy.
There was a problem.
He was not great.
It was bad. Come on, man, dude.
I'm gonna put the inclusivity bow on all of this. So when Picard went, I call him Picard, right? When Patrick Stewart came on The View and invited Whoopi Goldberg to be part of Picard, it was heartwarming, and that's the inclusion that we're talking about. It's like, okay, yeah, we got black people in space, but you know.
I had the opposite.
You had the opposite reaction.
Picard's difficult because, like, as much as I'm excited that we get this new Picard show, and I guess it's cool that Whoopi could be on the next season, but I feel like every episode of Picard I see is some young person grabbing him by the hand and dragging him across the set.
Grabbing him, and then from behind people who obviously aren't him. It's true. That is a little distracting.
He moves. He's Jean-Luc 3PO.
It's true. But I did get the warm fuzzies.
What was I thinking? 2 years old. All this man is thinking. All Patrick Stewart has to be thinking is the checks are clearing.
Yes.
The checks are clearing.
I mean, I'm not super excited about that show just because, like, I want to see something new. I haven't watched Discovery because baby, but like, you know,
Does your child sleep?
Yeah, no, she's actually
watch Discovery when she's asleep. Right. That show is great.
Asleep when they're asleep.
Yeah, when is she supposed to sleep?
Not my problem. I'm solving one problem at a time.
The audience is turned against Terry.
I'm just telling you when to watch it.
This is why you don't get Space Dad, okay? You don't understand.
No, Space Dad was boring.
Oh my god. That's what I'm saying. A new story, though. Again, they kind of went back again, but whatever. You know, Star Trek fans just have to be patient and hope for the best. Hope for the best.
When I met Avery Brooks once at a convention, and I was walking around the convention just taking, like, it was the first year in which I noticed that celebrities were charging money for, like, photos, and, like, not like their headshots, but like before you take a picture with them, like, you know. And I was fine. I think I would have been fine with people with rules and things, right? You make a rule, like, okay, it's a rule, I'll break it, but whatever. The first thing I noticed at that particular convention was I saw Roddy Piper. And I was like, oh my God, it's Roddy Piper. Hey, Mr. Piper, can I take a photo of you or whatever? And he was like, sure you can. And then he goes, it'll be $40. And I was like, what? So I stepped back. I was like, I walked away because I was like, I don't have $40 to give Roddy Piper. Then I saw Avery Brooks and I was like, oh man, I bet Avery Brooks won't charge me $40 for a picture, you know. And I'm walking up to him, and he's busy just lecturing some dude. He's just giving some guy the business who's, I don't know what this dude was wrong about, but he was very wrong about it. And Avery Brooks wouldn't let it go. Okay. Right? And Avery Brooks is just like on this guy. And I'm standing there with my phone, like, you know, and I'm like, hey, Mr. I'm trying to get his attention, you know. And the guy who's giving the business says, well, Mr. Brooks, I think this guy wants a picture with you, like trying to get out of the conversation. And Avery Brooks looks at me and goes, he can take as many pictures as he wants. I got something I still got to say.
Now that's that energy you wanted from Cisco. That's what you wanted.
So I'm like, beef. Oh my God. That's so funny. When I met LeVar Burton at an American Library Association conference, and I just like totally, it was like a community when like Troy is just like blankly staring, shaking. Yeah. That was pretty much. And then I was like, I loved you at Roots. My mom made us watch it every Black History Month. And he was like, what?
Man, that's hard.
Yeah, no, I just was like,
I couldn't have grown up in your block.
It was our one time. I can't imagine every year.
Yeah, Black History Month was pretty serious in my house.
We got Cooley High.
That's pretty good too. Any last? I think we're like down to the wire. Any last comments you guys want to say? Anything else you want to plug?
Yeah, come to Third Coast Comics. It's 6443
It's
North
amazing.
Road.
Do you guys still do karaoke?
No.
Sad.
That's
how I met Terry, doing karaoke.
For the record, we never did karaoke at Third Coast Comics. Ever. That never happened. Sorry. In an alternate universe, perhaps, but not at my comic shop. I would never do such a thing that might violate people's like trademarks and music rights and all that kind of thing in public space. Not me.
I mean, do you know how much I'm going to have to edit this audio now?
It's a great comic book store. It doesn't have that weird comic book vibe where people are like, well, he'll yell at you, but like.
So I do, so it's a question and comment. I would hope that you would do this at sort of maybe go to other libraries and do other things. I don't know how this was set up, but I think that this has a lot of value for obvious audiences, right? Yeah. But to go to different communities and different things. I mean, I'd be happy.
Ashley's a librarian at Grand Crossing.
It was set up because I begged them on Twitter.
Yeah.
Okay. And then they got paid, and they get the honorarium. So I mean, we can work out whatever we can. Yeah. I would love to do it again, though. I love talking to these guys.
It really is. It's like Ashley's effort to just even get this thing done.
Yeah. So shout out to Ashley.
Thank you.
I would be happy to get on the libraries.
Yeah.
I think you would be too.
Same, absolutely. Yeah.
I think, especially when you're talking about, this is Afrofuturistic content, but you covered a lot of things that you probably didn't intend to cover. And I just think of, different audiences when you talk about being younger kids and not having, your history taught to you, to be able to bring that to different communities all over the place. It's great that it's here. Let's go farther south side, west side, farther north side, everywhere if you could.
Yeah. I'll give you guys rides. You just gotta give me gas money.
Thank you. I do love the fact that we were able to do this on the south side because, I'm also south side born and raised, but currently residing on the north side. And working with Chicago Nerd Social Club, we always talk about wanting to get more coverage on the south side of Chicago as well. So this is a joy to be here. So
I only cared that it was near the L.
Also,
right.
Thank you.
She's gonna come back.
I'm a south side. This is the north side of the south side.
That is true. Yeah.
You can't really call this the south side.
It's numbered. So
where I'm from, I would not have referred to this. No, this is Chinatown. This is Chinatown. Right.
Yeah.
Right. You're from further south than me. Yeah.
I'm from like 87th and Dan Ryan, so I totally
Beverly. So no.
Amy's from further south.
Further south than east.
They stopped naming streets where Amy's from.
Is it Hegwish? Hegwish is like the
I'm from the east side of South Chicago, not Hegwish.
Oh, okay.
Avenue L?
Yeah. J.
Avenue J. Wow.
G.
I didn't know that existed until very recently, and I was
Mom's from Bush, 8th or Burley, Dad's 87 to Kingston. They went under the ladder.
Yeah.
The east side.
I used to live in Jeffrey Manor too, so I'm all about that cheap gas life. I understand. Yes.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you to Terry and to Matt. I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Oh, check out Lex and Matt's Excellent Adventure. That's my plug. That's the podcast.
I have nothing. I just show up places.